We got an interesting piece of news today. This comes courtesy of the Bleeding Cool's website, a credible source for most of this stuff. So while this is labeled as a rumor, it does lean more towards something that is a very strong possibility, and is that of the rumors that Robert Kirkman of Skybound and Image Comics has sold in the rights and license for a Transformers G.I. Joe animated series to be used on streaming services, specifically his Energon universe that he's been doing with the Skybound Transformer comic books. Now, this is quite interesting. There's a lot to unpack here. I mean, especially from a domino effect kind of things, because the Skybound comic has been selling very well. Now, granted, the comic book industry is not as big as what it was back in the past, but in terms of what is considered great selling comic books today, the Transformer comic books have been really crushing it under Skybound, Image, and everything that Robert has been doing with the Energon universe. Now, last time we had something like that was Dreamwave. Dreamwave had their comics. It sold ridiculously well, was topping the #1 bestsellers, and that opened the doors for Hasbro, Aaron Archer, and everyone on the Hasbro team to then make the pitch for Transformers to be something bigger than what it was at that point, which led to the Michael Bay movies, us becoming a huge mainstream, pop culture icon, and the rest is history. So by this being sold in, by this being a streaming service, using the comic books as a foundation, what is the good, what is the bad that could come from this? Again, Robert Kirkman sold in The Walking Dead, and that was ridiculously successful. Invincible, that was ridiculously successful. Can this be replicated for Transformers? So there's a lot to unpack here. Again, we probably won't know anything about this in the near future. Maybe, just maybe, at San Diego Comic-Con coming up next month, maybe something will be announced. But for now, we're just going to kind of take a step back and see what's going on here and what we could take away from it. Now, #1, the Energon universe essentially uses the Transformer brand and the G.I. Joe brand. If this is legitimate, this does make some cross connections with what is going on with Hasbro and their plans for a future G.I. Joe Transformers movie. It's a kind of a good stepping point to then lead into that. If you're going to do a G.I. Joe Transformer movie, maybe a really good top-selling, all the eyeballs streaming show about G.I. Joe and Transformers to kind of, wet your whistle early on would be a wise move. That's one way to look at it. #2, San Diego Comic-Con 2025 is going to have some Energon universe representation already with Transformers, in that of the Void Rivals Transformers box set that'll be available that weekend. The Commander class Jetfire with the Darak and the Solila G.I. Joe styled body figures. So you already have a little bit of, G.I. Joe-ish, adjacent Transformer kind of going on at San Diego. So there might also be a little bit of a good kind of foundation there to get people excited just starting with that weekend. So what are the pros and cons, though? I'm going to do a pro, I'm going to do a con, I'm going to do a pro, I'm going to do a con. I want to look at it from both the fan side, but also the business side of it. You try to have a rational look at everything. This is why you guys tune in on the Transformer Slag podcast. It's that it's not just a fan's opinion, but a rational business opinion from people that have worked within the industry. And don't let emotions get in the way of things, So here's a pro. The pro, it's a new Transformer animated series that'll no doubt probably be more mature due to its comic origins and everything like that. And it's something that's very welcome after the few hit and misses that we've had over the past couple of years. I liked Cyberverse, but it didn't really get the eyeballs. Earthspark has not been very well received outside of a small pocket audience. So it really is something where, and not to mention what's happening with Cyberworld, that is going to be here and gone very quickly, unfortunately. I just get a gut feeling on that one. But at the end of the day, it's something where at least we'll probably have something that's more mature, probably a longer runtime, and that's really good. The con of that is how many eyeballs will be on that. Will it be something that a general audience will be able to catch and enjoy, which will then, bring in new fans? We're going to show up regardless, but will it bring new fans and help the growth of the audience? That's a bigger question. Movies are a much more bigger stage. Streaming services, while they do well, are a smaller stage. Now, granted, things have changed throughout the years, especially after 2020. And again, using examples like The Walking Dead and Invincible helping a lot for those brands and bringing them to the mainstream, I'm very curious what that'll do for Transformers. Another pro is, streaming services, it opens it up to more creativity and less of the TV restrictions. So you don't have to worry about something like an Earthspark or a Cyber World or a Cyberverse that really has the limitations of what TV allows and what that show is really aimed at. Oh, this is supposed to be a TV wireless audience and playing it safe with that and everything, where that, at least by it being a streaming service, is a major pro. But the con is, again, streaming services are locked behind smaller audiences. People who have those services, people who have to pay for those services, and sometimes that just prevents things from happening. That's kind of what some people argue is what hurt, say, Transformers Earthspark, in that it was locked behind Paramount Plus. Some argue that's why BotBots didn't do well, because it was locked behind Netflix. So we don't really know what the larger implications of that in terms of the eyeballs will be, but by it not being on television, it does reduce the audience. But also by it not being on television and mainstream television, it also opens it up to more creativity and something higher than a TVY rating. A negative, though, is that by it being on a streaming service, there is always the chance that it might be also written in a bingeable nature. And that's something that I've always felt has been hurting a lot of television shows lately, in that they have been written in a bingeable nature, something where all the episodes are kind of written to be watched in all one go instead of slowly, enjoyed in little bite sizes of hour to a half hour episodes and then discussed on forums. I've personally felt that pacing out content does a brand way better, because it makes it something that people chew, digest, discuss, and then get excited for the next. Put out an hour-long episode. Have people enjoy it. Have them discuss it over the week. Have them get excited for the next one. End it on a cliffhanger. The thing with bingeable content is cliffhangers don't exist, because one episode just leads to the next as if it's one giant 12-hour episode, because that's what happens a lot of times with these 12-hour bingeable shows. So that's something that I worry about. It's kind of what hurt the War for Cybertron Netflix stuff, in all honesty. They were just these like bingeable, quickly chew and finish in the next 6 hours kind of thing. And, when you're also talking streaming services, I want to get into the real talk here of how streaming services have different unions when it comes to voice acting. And a lot of very celebrated voice actors in the Transformer world cannot participate in the streaming service platform because there is no unions there. Again, look what happened with the War for Cybertron Netflix series and how most of that voice acting was received by fans and non-fans. Again, real talk, outside of Frank Turturro, I mean, he did a fantastic job as Starscream in the War for Cybertron Netflix series. But his stuff was really good compared to what most of the other vanilla stuff was. And to be fair to Frank, Frank's been doing Transformer stuff 10 years prior to ever doing that Netflix stuff. So he's been Starscream before that. He's been doing a whole bunch of stuff where he was this experienced veteran surrounded by a bunch of people that we'd never hear from ever again. The Who? Who are these people? So that's also something that I'm worried about. I hope they open it up to experienced voice actors and talented voice actors within the unions and stuff. Frank could be there for Starscream, but we could also have the Scott McNeils, the David Kays, the Gary Chalks, and I could go on and on. The Peter Cullens, the Frank Welkers, like all these really talented people could then be also included in this for a really stellar, item. Another pro, and let's go on the other side of this, let's talk about toys when it relates to this. This could lead to a new toy line. And if it leads to a new toy line, yeah, that's great. We'll get a new toy line, so we'll have this stellar show and we'll have a brand new toy line. The con with that is if it's based off of, something that's a Netflix series and a streaming service, that means it's a lot smaller. And And if it's a lot smaller, that might lead to this toy line being a store exclusive. We saw that with the Netflix series, with comic media related products. They're always store exclusive. You know Walmart is going to be scrambling to pen that contract if this is a Netflix exclusive, and they're going to make it a exclusive to Walmart show. When all of a sudden, now that it's a store exclusive, that means less case assortments, that means less distribution, that means it's more difficult. We all know what happened with Netflix Soundwave and how that became like a $200 item in a span of just weeks. So that's always another kind of concern there. Another pro is, yes, that toy line could lead to some really cool toys, like RC, who had a radically different alt mode, and some of the others from the Energon universe and the Skybound books. The con is, most of these characters, unfortunately, are styled in a very Generation 1 design. Yeah, the alt modes might have little tweaks and things that are a little different, but those robot modes are pretty much slavishly loyal to the original Generation 1 Fluoro Deary designs from 84, 85, 86. So it's just going to be a lot more Generation 1. And it's not like we already had a lot more Generation 1 to begin with. Sure, they're going to probably have little, tweaks and shake it up a little bit, much like what we had with Siege and Earthrise. But it's going to be a lot more Siege Earthrise, which is still very Generation 1 in foundation, and a lot less, say, like Unicron Trilogy, which were radically different designs. So the con with that is we might have a great series, but we're going to get a lot of toys that are more or less the same kind of style and design of what we've been buying over the past 6 years. So that's something to take away from that. So, I mean, there's a lot here to unpack. We're probably going to be learning much more about this in the next coming weeks, especially with San Diego Comic-Con. I will be there at San Diego, so I'll try to be reporting as much as I can from my Twitter account, because I won't be able to do the podcast segments on the road. But we will try to keep you guys posted on what's happening with that. If this is legit, this is exciting from an opportunity standpoint, but there is some caveats that might come with that. So there's that. Speaking of fiction, the latest episode of Transformers Wild King from Japan just came out last night. Episode 7, The Ultimate Combiner. So go check that on the Karatomi YouTube channel. And the next episode, which will be episode 8, The Depths of Despair, that'll be debuting July 16th, 10 a.m. Wednesday, Japan time. For us Westerners, that'll be Transformer Tuesday, July 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check that out too. And we still got 3 more weeks until the Hasbro Transformers Cyber World web show will be debuting. That'll be Saturday, July 12th. So stay tuned for that. We'll keep you posted. We also have some SDCC reveals that we did on our Twitter account and socials, so go check that out too if you have a moment. And we'll talk deeper about those SDCC exclusives because we have those in hand here at the Transformer Slag Podcast HQ. So we'll talk about those in the next couple of days. But thanks again for listening to the Transformer Slag Podcast and keeping you educated, entertained, and informed on our glorious robot hobby. And I'll talk to you in the near future.